all hear me okay? Good morning, members. My name is Luz Molina Lopez. I am the chair of the California Board of Accountancy Legislative Committee, and I'd like to take a call and I would like to call our meeting to order. Let's start by taking roll call. Ms. Nancy?
Nancy Corrigan.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Alicia Burhow.
Thank you. With that, we have a quorum. Also, please, members, if you can remember to speak directly into the mic. It is difficult to hear otherwise. Let's begin our meeting with agenda item number 1, which is approval of the minutes. This is the minutes from the May 16th, 2019 Legislative Committee meeting. May I have a vote?
So moved.
Motion, sorry.
Seconded.
Thank you. Okay, so then now, are there any comments from the members? Any comments from the public? Okay, let's call for the vote.
Alicia Burhow?
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
And Corolla Nicholson? Yes.
Thank you. All right, so let's move on to agenda item number 3.
Two.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, agenda item number 2. It's the CBA 2019 Legislative Tracking Chart. This is a written report only found within our reading materials. Are there any comments on this written report from the members? Any comments from the public?
Madam Chair, if I may, I do have one adjustment that I wanted to add to that there is one bill, which is now a 2-year bill, that is AB 613, which is the first item at the top of page 2. That's now a 2-year bill that's not reflected on the report.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions on this? Any comments on item 2? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 3. This is update, discussion, and possible action on legislation on which the CBA has taken a position on. First, I would like to share that item 3N, which is AB 1525, and item 3P, Senate Bill 51, will be deferred to the CBA meeting a little later this morning. That would fall under the CBA item 1C1 and 1C2. Mr. Boone, would you like to take us through these?
Real quick, what was the second one? So 1525, and what was the other one?
The other one is Senate Bill 51.
51. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Boone?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we dive into the agenda, I would like to take a moment to introduce our new legislative analyst, Mr. Peter Renovitz, who is with us today in the audience. I'm sure he's standing up and waving. Mr. Renovitz joined the CBA earlier this month, and he comes with decades of experience as an employee in the legislature. He will be analyzing bills and drafting our legislative analyses, for which I'm personally grateful, and we're thrilled to have him on staff. Thank you for welcoming him to the CBA. Continuing on with the agenda, Madam Chair, members, to assist the LC efficiently complete its business, we recommend that staff dispense with the usual presentations on the LC items where staff recommend that the CBA maintain its position and that those bills have not been amended since the prior CBA meeting. Most of those bills are 2-year bills. So if it is agreeable to the members, I would not be presenting on the following LC items. Item 3A, which is AB 63, 3B, which is AB 193, 3C, which is AB 312, 3D, which is AB 476, item E, which is AB 535, F, which is AB 544, G, which is AB 613, J, which is AB 1140, L, which is AB 1271, O, which is AB 1545, and Q, which is SB 53. Again, none of those bills have been amended since the prior meeting. Staff recommend we maintain the positions that we have. And again, as well, nearly all of those are 2-year bills. So with the chair and the committee's indulgence, we will waive presentation on those particular bills.
I do appreciate that. Are there any comments from the members?
Do we need a motion, or are we good to go?
I don't believe we need a motion.
All right.
All right, thank
And
you.
the committee report will reflect that that the LC took no action on these items. So,
Thank you.
thank you, members. Proceeding to item 3H, which is Assembly Bill 802. This bill requires state and local agencies to submit reports to the legislature electronically rather than by paper. It also requires agencies to publish separately the data used to create their reports. Recent amendments require the Department of Technology to establish and maintain a statewide open data portal, and requires agencies as specified to post data to that open portal. Staff recommend we maintain our watch position, and therefore no action is required. I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the members on this one? Okay, please continue.
The next item is 3I, which is AB 1076. After the first mail-out, members, staff distributed a revised analysis. So the analysis that I'll be working off of says revised in the upper right-hand corner, just above the item numbers. Under current law, if an individual wishes to have their arrest or criminal conviction record sealed or dismissed, that person must petition the Superior Court and follow established procedures in the Penal Code. According to the author, that is a costly and time-consuming process for those being denied employment or housing opportunities due to their criminal history. Further, many eligible individuals may be unaware that they are eligible for this relief. AB 1076 takes that judicial petition-based process and transforms it into administrative process owned and managed by the Department of Justice, or DOJ. As indicated on pages 5 and 6 of the analysis, staff note that there is a population of licensees who have a status other than active and who have never undergone a criminal background check. This group is estimated to be between 10,000 and 13,000 licensees. If those licensees decided to return to active status, they would be required at that time to undergo a criminal background check. However, if those individuals had a conviction that was granted relief under AB 1076, the CBA would be unaware of that conviction and therefore unable to consider appropriate enforcement action. In light of this concern, Madam Chair, staff recommend an oppose unless amended position. I would like to add that we've had very productive conversations with the author's office, and earlier this week they asked for potential options that may resolve this concern. Of course, I'm happy to relay the views of the CBA to the author's office and work with them to resolve any concerns consistent with the position approved by the CBA. With that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back for discussion.
Thank you. Yes?
What were some of the options?
The option that I suggested off the top of my head, which is all I had during that particular conversation, was to authorize, to continue to allow the CBA to have access to those criminal conviction records. I shared with them our Business Professionals Code 5100 as well as 5063. And 5063 in particular is the one that requires a licensee to affirmatively inform the board of felony convictions and other convictions that are related to the practice of public accounting, and made the suggestion to them that once you become licensed, you're in this new realm, and awareness of your criminal history is very important to us from a consumer protection standpoint.
Right.
I'd say they took that under advisement, and they are considering it, and but they are aware of our meeting today and the discussion that we'll be having.
Okay.
Yes?
I have another question, sorry. Okay, so say a person's been inactive, they've been inactive for 3 or 4 years, something happens and they participate in a criminal activity, they get convicted, but they do their time and they want to come back and be an active CPA, would this prevent us from knowing what happened during that time period?
So as I understand it, the reason why this particular group of licensees, the reason why they have not undergone a fingerprint examination, or background check rather, is because of their status at the time when our retroactive fingerprinting requirement took effect in 2014. If you were in a non-active license status at that time, and that non-active status persisted to today,
Right.
then they have not undergone that criminal background check. Our regulations require, if you do then decide to go into an active status, at that time, the
You have
fingerprinting
to
will
have it.
occur. If between when the fingerprinting occurs and they are granted relief under this bill for an eligible conviction, it's during that window of time that we may not ever find out. And if they didn't affirmatively inform us of that under the law for BPC 5063, then our options to uncover that, I think, don't exist.
Okay. And that's- sorry, I had a question.
Alicia.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so, and we're talking about, so what type, has the author or you discussed, specific crimes? I mean, because if it's a DUI or something, we've talked about this with drug and alcohol, that doesn't concern me as much as, other crimes related to, defrauding frauding the public, that kind of thing.
So this new bill, so there are, under the current law right now, there are 3 or 4 different options that you have to pursue conviction relief on your record if you meet the criteria.
Right.
And that's scattered in a few different sections of the penal code. This bill kind of gathers them all up and then puts them into a new section with an administrative process. And so it takes it out of the judicial petition-based process and makes it automatic for folks at the Department of Justice who would just form checklists. And if you met all the criteria, then the conviction relief is granted. The criteria is the same. So the bill would not lead to a whole new host of individuals being granted relief who otherwise are not eligible for relief. They are taking the same criteria, putting it into a new code section, making that relief automatic, administrative, and then moving forth.
Okay.
I hope I said that clearly.
I think so. I think I'm
So,
getting it.
just so that I understand it clearly, this process is already in place. Now, though, there won't be a need for an individual to make a request to have this expungement. If they meet all the criteria, it'll just happen automatically?
The process is not, this is creating a new process. The current process, the criteria is the same. So the same types of crimes, the same types of individuals with criminal activity, the bill deals with the same population, the same types of crimes as in current law. What is changing, though, is the process, the mechanism whereby that relief is granted no longer requires an individual to go to a courthouse, file a fee, take time off work, and whatnot. It's all done behind the scenes in an administrative manner by the Department of Justice.
I also had one other question. Do we have an idea of the number of our licensees that are in inactive status that we do not have fingerprint records for?
Yes, between 10 and 13,000
Yeah.
individuals.
Okay. That's a lot.
That is significant.
10% minimum.
Yeah. So, in the course of my discussion, I believe they recognized the issue, which I think is why they asked for potential options to address it, which I took to be a positive sign.
Okay.
Any more discussion on this one?
So
Ms. Verhoeven.
so even though it says, a watch, would you recommend an opposed unless amended?
Yes, the current position, so the board did see this in the prior meeting, the current adopted position is a watch. The recommendation, though, for today is to change that to opposed unless amended in order to address
Right.
this particular group of licensees for whom we do not have.
Okay, I'll make the motion to change our watch position for AB 1076 to an opposed unless amended.
Do I have a second? All right, any further discussion? Ms. Hines?
I mentioned that I found it interesting that the contractor state license board took a solid opposed position without recommending any changes for amendment. And it doesn't really provide any background explanation. So I wonder if is there a way for us to potentially consult with some of the other boards within the DCA to, talk to them about, inquire of them about their positions on the bill as well, and whether they are, why a board like this may be similar, may be predisposed to just oppose it outright, or whether other boards under the DCA may have perspectives similar to ours.
I can certainly reach out to, probably the most expeditious way to reach out to the Department of Consumer Affairs, who tracks and maintains information about the various boards' positions. I'll inquire at DCA what other boards may have positions on the bill.
Ms. Burhow?
I always like oppose unless amended or support if amended, because again, it brings us to the table.
Yes,
And
I
they'll
agree.
listen to us when we say, look, let's see if we can work together on this, rather than an outright oppose. So if they're willing to cooperate with us, I want to have that wiggle room for us to work with them.
Thank you. Any more comments? Any comments from the public? Let's move to roll call.
Okay. Corolla Nicholson?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
Alicia Burhouse?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to the next item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's 3K, AB 1181. This bill requires financial records relating to certain solicitations for charitable purposes to be maintained according to specific accounting standards apart from generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP. If a charitable organization receives a non-cash contribution from a donor who requires that contribution to be used outside of the United States, AB 1181 would require the contribution to be valued using the fair value of the end recipient market. This bill is sponsored by the California Attorney General, who believes the change is necessary to curb certain deceptive practices whereby a charity assigns a value for the donation based upon the U.S. market value, although they argue it should be for the intended recipient market. The AG's office argues this is a misleading practice. The recent amendments to the bill place GASB back in as one of the organizations involved in the establishment of GAAP and made other changes that are noted on page 1 of the analysis, but they don't resolve the CBA's main concern regarding the establishment of an accounting standard outside the typical process. Since the prior CBA meeting, staff have engaged with CalCPA and the nonprofit community to advocate for the board's position on this bill. Earlier this month, the bill passed out of the Senate Judiciary Committee and will be heard next in Senate Appropriations. Discussions continue between the opposition and the AG's office on ways to address our mutual concerns. Madam Chair, staff recommend the CBA maintain its opposed position. In light of the recent amendments, though it is advisable for the board to submit a revised position letter to the legislature. Following today's meeting, staff can prepare one for the president's signature.
Thank you. Any comments on this? Ms. Burhow?
Is the Attorney General's office open to any type of amendment that's going to satisfy or satisfy the board or CalCPA or anything else?
From the discussions that I've been a part of, I've observed that they are considering that. I think the suggestions that have been put forward are to either to address the concerns in one of two ways. Either make the bill perhaps a 2-year bill or slow it down in some manner, so that way then FASB can do their work to quickly conduct the process to update their standards. The alternative is to, apart from changing accounting standards, have some other mechanism to surface the value of these potential products. So I've been a part of conversations where they've stated that they are considering those things.
Mm-hmm.
Where they currently are on those at this moment, I couldn't be more specific.
I would love to hear from CalCPA. What have you been hearing?
Jason Fox with the California Society of CPAs. What Mr. Bone laid out is fair, and I think our ask has been the underlying question and concern raised by the Attorney General's office is valid, but the solution that's being offered for a California-specific standard is the concern from our standpoint. And so our ask has been to allow for FASB and other national stakeholders to go through their process, which is currently underway, to have that conversation, develop a more comprehensive solution that would probably, frankly, I think better for all involved rather than a one-off California specific. I think the Attorney General's office, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I think they recognize the value of having a national solution, but they want to be sure that there will be something and a process will continue absent of legislation in California. So I think with the conversations to date with the proponents and the author is to see what can be done to kind of set some expectations and check marks and benchmarks to show that FASB and others are working towards a solution that would be amenable to the Attorney General's office so that, 1181 isn't necessary in California.
Do you feel, do you think the Attorney General's office would be willing to slow the bill down so we can work on this a little bit more?
I think that's our hope, and I think to get to that point, I think it's trying to mesh up FASB standard setting process, which doesn't always mesh up well with the California legislative or policies, standard setting process. And so what can FASB or CalCPA or others show that there's a process going and moving towards a outcome? I think if the Attorney General sees that that's moving in a timely fashion, they might be more interested in pausing the bill for making a 2-year bill or holding it on the floor until later this fall. But that's certainly our hope and our goal, what we're trying to get to.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, so the recommendation from staff is to maintain our opposed position. Unless I hear otherwise, we can move on. Okay?
The next is item 3M. Members, this is AB 1521, the CBA Sunset Bill. After the first mail-out, staff distributed a revised analysis. So the version that I'm looking at says, again, that word revised in the upper right-hand corner just above the item numbers. Since the prior CBA meeting, the bill was amended to related to the CBA's fees, and now sets $250 as the minimum amount and $280 as the maximum amount that the CBA may charge for its license renewal and initial licensure fees. These amendments were approved unanimously by the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee during our July 8 hearing. During the hearing, President Famelet expressed appreciation for those fee provisions, but also made it clear that we expect additional fee increases beyond those amounts will be necessary to sustain the CBA's operations and establish an adequate reserve. As also noted in the analysis on the prior bill, AB 1076, there is a conflict that presently exists between our sunset bill and AB 1076. It's a technical matter that we'll be able to address through subsequent amendments. Madam Chair, staff recommend the CBA maintain their support position and no action is required at this time, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. I do appreciate the efforts made by our board to try and get the numbers or the fees that we want. I do also appreciate the legislature for their analysis and what they feel should be appropriate. Are there any comments from, I know we're going to discuss this fee structure later at the CBA meeting. Are there any comments about this, the changes right now for this specific bill, the sunset bill? Okay, seeing none, we can move on.
Thank you. 3M is Senate Bill 601. This bill authorizes any state agency that issues a business license to reduce or waive any fees required for licensure renewal or to replace a physical license for an individual or business displaced by a declared emergency. The prior version of the bill simply provided broad authority to a board to reduce or waive those fees, but it was recently amended to authorize a state agency to establish a process to accept and evaluate those applications for the waiver or reduction of fees in these emergency situations. Staff recommend the CBA maintain their support position and no action is required. I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, we can move on.
We are now in item 4.
Oh, thank you.
4A is Assembly Bill 5. Again, there was a revised analysis distributed after the first mail out. So the version says revised in the upper right-hand corner.
I'm sorry to interrupt. So this is one of the new ones. These following two bills are new. We have not yet discussed these at this committee.
Yes, thank you for the clarification, Madam Chair. Yes, first time on these bills. AB 5 codifies a 2018 California Supreme Court decision that established revised criteria that classify workers as either an independent contractor or an employee. In general, the bill applies that court decision, known as the Dynamax decision, statewide to all employees. The bill, however, contains a number of exceptions, including one that applies to accountants. As indicated on pages 3 and 4 of the analysis, the bill creates an alternate 9-point criteria to evaluate the working conditions of accountants and certain other professionals. Accountants who meet that criteria are not bound by the Dynamax decision. The CBA, on occasion, will contract with outside CPAs to consult with on enforcement matters. However, as discussed in the analysis, the bill is not expected to impact the CBA's ability to contract with these CPAs as we meet the 9-point exception criteria, as well as the criteria of the Dynamax decision. Therefore, Madam Chair, staff recommend the CBA adopt a watch position on the bill, and I will turn it back to the committee for discussion and possible action.
Thank you. Any questions here? I'm sorry, I'm reviewing my notes real quick just to make sure I got everything covered. Okay. Thank you. We can move on to the next one. Oh, I'm sorry. We need to take a position on this one?
If that's the committee's desire.
I'm sorry. So yes, so the staff's recommendation is to watch this bill. Do I have a motion? A second?
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Any questions from the public? Okay, can we take a vote?
Okay, Alicia Burhell,
Abstain.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes,
And Corolla Nicholson. Yes.
thank you. Okay, moving on to the next bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our final bill on the agenda is AB 1343. This is item 4B. This bill requires private colleges regulated by the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education to meet certain spending criteria relative to the amounts of funding they receive from federal agencies. To establish that those private colleges comply with the spending criteria, they may submit to the Bureau an audit or audited financial statement by a CPA attesting that the institution meets those requirements. The CBA may wish to consider whether the possible accounting engagements contemplated by the bill would fall into the scope of the audits that may be performed in these types of situations. I would like to add that earlier this week, we received an update from the author's office regarding the support and opposition to the bill. It appears that the various veteran and military organizations listed in my analysis have removed their opposition. Madam Chair, staff recommend a watch position. I will turn it back to you for discussion and possible action.
Thank you. Do you have any insight into why these groups had initially opposed and now they have removed their opposition?
I think it's actually more of a clerical error in that they were erroneously noted in a legislative analysis, which then I relied upon. Mm-hmm. And so as we keep with our practice, we share our analyses in advance with authors' offices, and we invite them to participate here if they wish to choose so, and they were able to help us clarify the actual support and opposition on the bill.
Thank you. And then also, I do understand that this requirement, or this bill, would not require private colleges, would not mandate them to use the services of a CPA for their audit. Is that correct, for this meeting of this criteria?
I believe that's correct, Madam Chair. The bill states, I'm looking for the language, bear with me. The bill states that a college may presumptively, let's see here. It says essentially if the college submits to the Bureau this audit or audited financial statement, then they are presumptively viewed as being in compliance with the section. So it doesn't state, the language doesn't say they shall do this. I view this as a pathway that the bill outlines. It's silent on other potential pathways, but I don't believe this is a prescriptive approach that every college must take. It's an option for them. If they pursue this pathway and such an audit or audited financial statement is presented, then it is presumed that the college would be in compliance.
Thank you. So let me clarify my understanding. So the bill is not mandating that this audit happen, but if it does happen, must it be done through a CPA?
I think that's fair, although I would just note that, well, not to repeat myself, but that it states if the college may pursue this pathway of contracting with a CPA to conduct this audit or this audited financial statement, and then submit that to the Bureau. If that audit, that financial statement indicates, if it is signed off by a CPA and it indicates that the college is in compliance with the other requirements of the bill, then the Bureau must consider presumptively that they have complied with the requirements. The Bureau may conduct their own investigation, I believe, because it's a presumptive rather than a conclusive requirement, or it's a presumptive compliance rather than conclusive compliance. But that's my understanding of the bill.
Got it.
I hope I've said that clearly.
Yeah, so the thing I'm catching myself on is there was, my understanding is that perhaps this task of auditing private colleges in this way is not necessarily part of the task that a CPA typically would do. Am I incorrect in that?
I think it's, Mr. Franzel may be able to help illuminate this, but it's been suggested that in our in some of our informal discussions and review that we've done on the bill, that's something for the board to consider, that this may be outside, that the type of work that's contemplated by the bill may be outside of the scope of services that a CPA may perform in these types of conditions, but I confess it's a bit beyond my scope, so I'm pleased that Mr. Franzel is with me.
Thank you.
I guess if I understood the question, not this last one, but the one before, if it's an audit, it needs to be done by a CPA. So that part, as I read the bill, it talks about performing the financial statement audits that would need to be done by a CPA. What the bill's allowing for is kind of a subset of additional service that could accompany the audited financial information that the CPA is performing. And the question that I believe the analysis, or staff's analysis raises, is whether or not that additional service that's being contemplated in the bill kind of falls outside the scope of what an audit would generally require and the professional standards provide for. It would seem to me if I'm understanding correctly, they're asking for an additional level of certification that really doesn't fall within the scope of what an audit does. And it really potentially should be a engagement separate and apart from the financial statement audit, or something that's added to the engagement of the financial statement audit, but not necessarily something that a CPA would certify to some type of legal compliance within the course and scope of a financial statement audit.
Thank you. So if a CPA is not providing this certification, then who else would?
Well, this bill seems to only contemplate that the CPA can provide this certification. The question, and so I don't think staff are raising the issue with the CPA providing the certification. It's whether or not this type of certification falls within the scope of the financial statement audit, or really should be something that is, you've contracted with the CPA to do the audit, and as part of that audit, you also contract with them to do this, this firm to do this certification. And they're well positioned to do that, but it'd probably be something done other than under general accepted auditing standards. It might be something done under agreed upon procedures or some other type of professional standards, so they're not blurring the line between the auditing standards and some type of certification that appears to require them to reach a legal conclusion of whether or not something's being done.
Thank you. I am very interested in this topic. I do feel that more regulation is needed for post-secondary private colleges. There is a lot of news about perhaps maybe some vulnerable populations being caught up in some of this trouble, and so I am very interested in this topic. Thank you for the analysis. So let's see. We have a recommendation from staff to watch this bill. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you. Any more questions on this? Any questions from the public? Seeing none, let's go for the vote.
Corolla Nicholson?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes?
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
And Alicia Berto?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so where am I?
That concludes item 4, Madam Chair.
So that was item 4. Do we have item? Yes, okay, so our next item, item 5, is review and possible consideration of positions on legislation the CBA is monitoring.
I have no,
Mr. Bowden.
thank you, Madam Chair. I have no prepared comments about these bills, but I'm happy to answer any questions the members may have about these bills that we are monitoring.
Thank you. I do appreciate how they are pointed out to us in these bullet points, how some of them are bundled as the cannabis-related bills, other stuff, and then the spot bills. Are there any questions on these bills that are being monitored by staff? All right, seeing none, we can move on. Item 6 now. Legislative items for future meetings. Mr. Bone, do you have any comments related to this?
No comments, Madam Chair.
Any comments from the members? Okay. Agenda item 7 is public comments. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, we can move on to agenda item 8, agenda items for the next meeting. Do any members wish to request that any items be placed on the next meeting? Seeing that there are none, this meeting is adjourned.